This is Dave Monk, your Prairie Monk, WEFT Champaign, 90.1 on your FM dial.
And Dave on the board. We might get started by mentioning to folks that whenever you hear us speaking on the microphones here, we are expressing our own views and opinions, and that's our own, whoever happens to be talking, that's the person who expresses those opinions. WEFT and all the other folks here at the station don't necessarily have the exact same thoughts and opinions. So just getting that out of the way to get going. Oh, yes, we should also mention that it is February the what today?
22nd.
22nd. Okay.
Okay. Nice snow. I took photographs on the Pocket Prairie. Enjoyed doing that. It sort of demonstrates that there is a winter on the prairie. It's a four-season prairie, and it's got a silhouette for its plants. Its seed pods are still there, and it also enjoys the winter. It's adapted to it after 10,000 years of since glacial retreat, and that's good. I wanted to mention that Dave and I will be going to the Prairie State Conservation Coalition, which is a coalition of people getting together trusts so that trusts can protect themselves by knowing what they are, how they can prevent themselves from being invaded, how they can be accredited at a national level, and so that's interesting. Dave has also been working with the Urbana Free Library regarding archiving, and that's been making progress, and we're looking at a database there that will allow people to have access to what we've been doing and saying for many years. At some stage, I want you to think about regional trails. We're getting local trails, and one regional trail which joins Urbana and Danville, but we need to think about other trails that have possibilities. I still encourage you to think about your environment. I've been reading a book about Indian tales. It's about the era of Hiawatha, when Longfellow was selling a long poem internationally, and it's got quite a little bit of criticism at one stage because it treats Indian life as relatively quiet and laid back, and at the time there were lots of Indian wars and the like. So there was also a homeless program, and I was encouraged I encouraged myself to call in and say one of the problems with the homeless situation is that as you get more technical, you need fewer people with much more institutional knowledge. And so do we really need more population? Ecologically, we need to give the whales and the porpoises and the trees their opportunity to be there, and we need to have enough time and space to watch how these creatures change, because as climate changes, so the ecology will change, and it's a dynamic thing. We need to be on top of that to keep an understanding of what we're doing. So I have a guest today. It's Mark Johns, and he's going to talk to us about gaming. I was impressed. I visited Christmas relatives in Chicago, and the two young people were working with Lego, and that's virtual reality and things like that. So, Mark, tell us a little bit about gaming. Gaming. I was often referred to as gaming theory. I don't know what the gaming theory is. It's probably got us.
Game theory is they made a movie about the guy who was the best at that in the 50s, Nash. He was schizophrenic, BTW. The movie was kind of dumb, but at least it was a step, right?
Okay.
But game theory is sort of about it's like economics, right? There's X number of resources and X number of players in a closed system, and how does each player benefit the most? What decisions you make? That's game theory. And if you have a closed, limited system, like say the game of chess, it's very easy to build a simulation of the entire game universe, and then simulate over and over and over again by brute force just what decision is the best. That's how Deep Blue worked. That's how Garry Kasparov was defeated in 1997 by a giant array of IBM machines.
Yeah.
And that's what we've been doing, building video games, and that's what we've been doing with computer science, with limited domain simulations, to make decisions about things in limited domains.
When you
That's how Siri works, right?
When you
I don't
talk-
need to type.
talking
Siri
to
is
the
the only
microphone.
bitch that I like. Excuse me.
So okay.
Okay.
Uh,
But yeah, yes, game theory, sure.
yes. Okay. We've had some people on campus that have started to work with this. We've had Moog synthesizers and things like that.
Yes, they're selling them again, and everything old is new again, right? And Daft Punk used Moogs in their 2013 album, and that sort of ignited the trend watchers and trend followers, and everybody follows those, and now Moog is back because there's demand for it. But yeah, the original Moog synthesizers were
And
quite a
Moog
thing.
has passed on, I think.
Yes.
There were other names. There's Maruda, and
Let's see, what was it? Marauder, yes.
Uh-huh.
In Germany, Daft Punk made that great little track featuring the interviews with him in their 2013 album about his start using a click track. He had the insight to put a click track to the Moog and the Moog synthesizer and start putting things in 4/4 time.
so the Moog synthesizer was the first. Well, there were opportunities before that, but it was where you could digitize. You could take.
It's sort of a mix. It's really a nexus point between analog and digital, the Moog synthesizer. It's interesting. So you can have analog things pipe in through quarter-inch cables and then control this digital machine. So it's at the nexus.
You could alter it. You could extend it. You could
Yeah.
scratch it. You could
Yeah.
do a lot of things with it, and you could transmit it to a computer.
Yes, and you can do all that now. It's really with technologies now as well.
So a lot of the keyboards that you see have the elements of Moog.
Sure. Well, there's you can hook your Moog up to a MIDI controller. You can pretty much hook anything up to a MIDI controller. If you go to a stage show, if you go to your, let's see, Lil Wayne concert, your 2 Chainz show, and you're seeing the lights at the assembly hall, that's being controlled by some dude who's like hitting a button, or it may be controlled by a click track that's playing along, the beat that 2 Chainz is rapping to
Yes,
live, and
you
that
could have
that controls the lights, and then you can do even more things with that, and sync MIDI to music and interaction with players, and maybe interaction with players' smartphones. There's all kinds of things that you could do by hooking things up together and getting that heartbeat going.
Yes,
Picking up on different frequencies.
thinking about being in a theater at Cranit where dancers were dancing and they were wearing devices where the dancers could report into a Moog like
Yeah.
synthesizer,
Well,
and that would change the music. That would
the theremin, the guy who invented the theremin, was a Russian guy who was living in New York, and he had ballet dancers in New York. So the theremin is, it just picks up on the disturbances in the magnetic fields around it, and so you can use your hand or any part of your body to modulate the pitch frequency and the volume. And you can hook that up to MIDI too. But he had dancers. It's very tough to control because it's like pure analog, but it's outputting sort of a pure sine wave, right? And then changing the frequency and the pitch, the frequency and the anyway. And he had dancers, ballet dancers out in New York. And that was in 1918. So this is not new stuff. And you can do all this stuff in your Final Cut Pros with your massive VST and. And then hook it up to MIDI and do interesting stuff.
There was an era of punk rock, if I remember.
Well, there's still, I grew up in this town, right, Dave? And I remember, off Green Street, all these old houses, we'd go down to the basement, there'd be a mud floor, punk bands would be touring through the country, stopping through in Urbana or Champaign, and, there'd be, there's still punk going on. Crazy, sweaty basement house parties, Schlitz, Hams, High Life, PBR in cans, people moshing, sweaty, blah, blah, blah. And that was only like 10 years ago, 8 years ago.
So you still have some of these people around. Morgan Powell, I think, has been involved in this sort of thing. So
Morgan Powell's great, yeah.
And there are people like Andy Warhol.
Andy Warhol's a hero. Andy Warhol died before his time from a gallbladder surgery in the 80s. They had to actually cut open your whole stomach, and luckily I had to get my gallbladder out as well, but they did it laparoscopically, and so I'm okay. So hopefully I can live longer than Warhol, and I can build something bigger than just a factory. But yeah, Andy Warhol is totally a hero, and Kubrick as well.
Yes.
And 2001 has been an inspiration for. We did some work for Daft Punk and Justice, Doom Laser, my company, in 2008 and 2009 for the Tap Tap Revenge series on the iPhone. And the Stargate sequence at the end of 2001 was a huge inspiration for I did a lot of work to make it possible for us to make the final boss track of Tap Tap Dance have the Phantom Part 2 by Justice, this French duo, sort of this Smokers sequel to Daft Punk. And we did sort of a Stargate sequence inspired,
So
MIDI controlled. Well, so Rockefeller is interesting, right? Because Rockefeller, John D., built this company starting small into this big thing, and he still has a foundation. If you listen to public radio, you'll often hear the Rockefeller name, and he built a big dynasty, and I respect that. The problem is that pure capitalism has its issues, especially now, as you hinted at. Now that we have more and more automated systems, there's less and less value to human labor, and
Yes. So there is a concern that the 1% can take over and leave people on the street. So that's why we have.
I was concerned about that, but I'm not as concerned about that. I was really concerned about it 5 years ago. I'm less concerned about it now. I think people will be able to figure it out based on the discussions that people have been having on the internet and the things that have been uploaded, and recorded, that both humans and these digital machines can analyze and figure out that there's things to protect here. It's very important that we fix what's going on right now socially in society with our economy and the way we treat the homeless and old people and people that aren't easily categorized by the system that we're in.
So we have some pretty big pieces of equipment around town.
Mhm.
We have the Blue Goose, or whatever it's called, over there on St. Mary's Road, which is a huge, huge computer that can do things that humans cannot do,
Yeah.
but they're repetitive, and it still needs humans in there.
Well, it's really simple. Artificial intelligence is really simple. All you do is you build a simulation, right? of every input coming in. You use a high-level algebra to be able to make sense of whatever abstract inputs you have going in, and then you run that simulation the same way Deep Blue works, except instead of a closed system, it's an open system, right? And then that's the vessel for consciousness. And I'm not sure if it's already been made, but it's getting there. And you need people to train these intelligent machines to have respect, and just like you train kids in public education, and yeah, and
So we now have C2B, which is fiber optics around town, and
Yeah.
that will probably give us the opportunity to do more things that are related to people and defining who they are and what they might be able to do. But that requires training, and so it leaves a large population without jobs. And
well, the whole system is going to leave everyone without jobs. If you're born now, right? As a computer scientist, right? As I went to Eastern Illinois University and then the University of Illinois, and interned one floor below Steve Jobs in Cupertino, California, right? Making iPod video games. I've seen how things work, and then made the most popular iPhone app when the App Store launched, Tap Revenge and stuff. I see how technology works, and I can sort of make guesses about the future, right? And the stuff that the number one job sector right now in the United States, transportation. We all know there's self-driving cars. That job sector is gone. Basically, every job sector that we have now is going to be eaten by automation, and that will increase ever more so once we have abstract artificial intelligence that can be simulated, as you say, like out on St. Mary's Road with these, massively parallelized computing systems. So, unless we do something to just tweak the way our society works, and I'm not saying capitalism isn't the right way to go, you just need to improve the baseline for the people at the bottom. If you look at the power law, the way any product, comment, any product that's sold in a networked economy is distributed according to the power law. So you'll have it's an exponential curve. It's like everyone knows the bell curve, right? The power law is the other one, the exponential curve. So everyone gets the stuff a few people have all the winnings, right? And then a few more do sort of okay, and then most of the people don't really make much at all. And as we're in a globalized economy, everyone's buying whatever on Amazon.com. You're buying from Steam. You're buying from Xbox and stuff. You're ordering your groceries online. You're streaming your music online. That distribution is becoming stronger and stronger. But that's how Reddit posts are. Everything Reddit posts, blog popularity, Google index rankings and stuff. They all follow this power law distribution basically. So what that means is, sure, we live in a land of equal opportunity, so everyone sort of has the opportunity to get to the top of this power law, but by definition 80%, 90% are going to not, yeah. And so if you're okay with saying, yeah, anyone can make it, it's equal opportunity, but that opportunity is sort of a lottery, you need to make sure the baseline is okay. And I think the best way to do it is to extend Social Security for everyone making under a certain income, and close down the prisons. There's supermax prisons down at the bottom of the state of Illinois. People whine about pigs being birthed in weird ways on on your Facebook posts, they're being confined when they're being born and whatever. But we actually put humans that are not easily categorizable in these little boxes that cost a lot of money, far away from population, and they're just left in a room, and they're fed through a food slot, and they go crazy down there. Let's get rid of that. That's not only is that cruel, and it's crueler than eating animals or eating cute animals, right? it costs money, and let's dial that money priority down, dial up some priorities for, humans, and get things on track for the planet and uniting us so that we don't have problems and we can, keep the technological systems going and start traveling to the stars and whatnot.
One of the things that has been affecting this is the size of things. So we have on Wright Street a huge nanotechnology building which has just gone up, and that's allowed computers to be small. And
That's
so
exciting. Yeah, and then carbon nanotubes coming up too, yeah.
Well, I can remember the day when if you ran Plato, you wanted a visual, you had to bring in a carousel. You had to punch a button for a carousel slide to come up, and the volume of the tubes used were huge. Now you can get that on the end of your finger, and so nanotechnology is changing the world also.
It's exciting, but there is a limit. There's a fundamental limit, and that's something that people who are building simulations need to understand. That's something that the computers will need to understand, that there is a limit to the amount of, information that you can physically put in space. Look it up on Wikipedia. It's like, I keep wanting to say Bressingham's concept, but Bressingham does like the pixel line algorithm. But there is a limit. So basically, blah blah blah. What that means is, if you want to simulate something fully, right? So if you really want to simulate how the universe works, how the planet Earth works, you can't do it without technology at least the size of the planet Earth. But even then, you're not thinking universally, because the planet Earth is part of a much larger system, and the universe. And so to simulate something as complex and refined, and all the blood and particles that are going on in the skin flakes and stuff, and all the weird cosmological synchronicity that's going on, you need to have something at least the size of the universe. So what the computers are seeing now, what the people are simulating now, is much more digitized. Like it's a pixelated version,
Yes.
and it will always be pixelated. And we need to make sure that the value that we have on the planet Earth now is not completely lost. We've lost 40–50% of the biomass on Earth since the early 70s. We need to make sure that we don't lose too much more, because otherwise we'll regret it later when all we have is pixelized stuff on the surface, and it'll be trickier.
Lose creatures at a
We'll
rapid
lose the
rate.
variety. Variety is the spice of life, Dave.
And you'll lose some of the dynamics because these
Yes.
creatures interact and
Yes.
they change.
Yes, they provide much value. Cinnamon and cocoa. Put it in your coffee and a little honey. That cocoa is you'll read in the news it's going to become much more expensive because of what they call global warming. At least that's what they say now.
Yes, well,
It's hard to don't pay attention to the
but while we're
ripples so
talking
much.
about this, we also have to know that the wee folk, little folk, do get the chance to use the computer at a different level.
Yeah, you were talking about C2B2.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm a little upset with the way the Verizon and Comcast business models work, because a lot of the infrastructure, broadband infrastructure that they use and they make a profit on, was paid for by our tax dollars. And while we have almost a choice whether to buy Verizon or Comcast, depending on where you are, we do not have a choice whether to pay our federal taxes or not. So if our tax dollars are going to provide this broadband, we shouldn't allow these big companies to take advantage of us with poor service. And C2B2 is a good effort and just needs some direction to provide good service. And I think there's a way to have big nonprofits doing things in an interesting way. And I figured out a model for my business, my LLC, which is a sole proprietorship now, blah, blah, blah. But I founded it in 2008, Doom laser to feed large nonprofits which own other nonprofits. And
Can WEFT crawl onto
UC2B.
C2B2. Wait, UC2B? Jeez. Okay. UC2B, sure.
So AT&T could crawl onto it, Comcast could crawl onto it. Can non-profit agencies like WEFT?
Yeah, anybody can. Yeah, WEFT could do it. Yeah, you guys to get your act together a little bit, because WEFT is a treasure in this community, and the potential for WEFT is huge, and it's been sort of neglected by many.
Well, you have to get people together, and it's not something that happens simply. It's hard to run non-profit agencies.
There's some people that thrive on those kinds of problems, and one of the problems with the society that we have now is it stamps down people. And what did Mort say? A young man ain't nothing in the world these days, right? It's the same.
So in this, there's a simulation of a brain.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about what you experience with brains. You have a game theory, but you also have a brain theory.
Well, my plan in the past, and it's still sort of my plan, was once I took Bio 101, like the semester before I went to Apple, interned at Apple, I had already had I had my data structures at the U of I. I had to take a class where you build a computer from like logic gates and OR gates, then you build a 4-bit adder by connecting them together, and then you make simple machine language where you have switches that are the ones and zeros, and then have it run it and see what happens, and then you do this assembly language abstraction, and then you do a C compiler, and C, which is the first programming language I learned, and the language I shipped and sold my first video game, a Tetris clone for the Mac called Descender, is a fairly high level language, but it's also close to the metal. And then when I got to Bio 101, and I started seeing how DNA and RNA worked, and I was like, oh wow, this is just pretty much the same idea as low level assembly language, and this is all programming kind of things. And yeah, and so
on-off
my
data.
My plan was and then you have two strands, so you have redundancy. It's your one strand is a backup for the other. That's why you got a double helix.
Professor of redundancy.
And then the telomeres at the end of DNA strands are kind of like the little ends of a VHS tape. It's kind of funny, or a cassette tape. And it's really funny too. Back in the day, in the Commodore 64, BTW, the SID chip in the Commodore 64, used for chip tunes in 80s computer games, also picked up by Timbaland and other artists and used in hip-hop beats production. You would load your programs in your video games into the Commodore 64, sort of like a single strand of DNA with your cassette tape.
In order to do this, you have to have researchers that are looking at the brain.
My plan was to go back and get a master's degree after I got my company running in bioinformatics, and then an MD later probably in my late 30s is the plan, in neuroscience. I ran into a guy in neuroscience the other day, and it's the capitalism. Pure capitalism is the problem. It's a little bit distorting things, because he was excited to work for a pharmaceutical company, right? Whereas I'm excited to work on brain-computer interfaces for video games. So,
Okay.
And anyway, yes, you need research. It's going to happen. That's the way technology is going. Virtual reality is the first step, and we have like Oculus, and there's a company out in Florida, and then Microsoft's getting into it now. Really good motion tracking for VR, and then the next step is hooking in right behind the optic nerve internally in the brain, and then eventually we'll be really in these pixelated instead of looking at a screen in front of your face like this, Dave, and you're going to just jack in, and you won't even press a button because you'll be able to think your passcode to start the
yes, the brain is very flexible and very adaptable.
Yes.
And it's hard for on-off data to follow it sometimes. So there's researchers have to know what is a specific
really,
place where
yeah.
things happen.
Yeah, and so that's why you need people, young people, interested in doing this sort of stuff, but not for pure profit. It's an ideological problem that we have in the United States. We need to inspire people to do things for humanity, but also make a profit. So, like I was saying, make a business model that's owned by a trust. Form an LLC, right? A limited liability corporation. Have 80% of that LLC owned by a nonprofit trust.
So are you teaching young children to be involved?
I've been doing it indirectly in the video games that I've been making. I've been expressing the way I feel about the world indirectly for a long time because I was scared about saying things out front, and I still am not willing to say some of the things that I've been through and some of the ways that our current society punishes people who they think are different, and it's really effed up, right? Because I went to public school and I have a high code of ethics. I'm not a violent person, and Abraham Lincoln is an inspiration and a homie, right?
This starts at a very young age, and you have to.
Yeah.
If you're not very careful, your life is over before you've got to do what you want to do. So
Yes.
some people start off with their baby in the womb, and you play Beethoven or whatever to them, and they come out with this in their mind. And then
I think anyone has the potential to untangle the tangled cables of their lives and rise up above them. And I've seen
Yes.
so many people that can do that. And I admit that some people are born with advantages where they never even see. That's one of the problems with inheritance and not taxing on inheritance. Some people are born into Easy Street and don't even see how tough it can be for others to rise up out of the systematized. Think of the poor Native Americans, that got really screwed over by happenstance and fate. When people with guns and alcohol and smallpox came in and have herded them into things and break
So we
the
have
deals
the
all
same
the time.
coming from places where young folk are hospitalized, and you can take those young folk out and change their lives by inputting and getting them to think.
Well, it's not
Or
just
they didn't
young.
have that opportunity.
Yes, but it's not just young folk, Dave. How old are you, Dave? You don't like to say it, right? It's old folks too. We put them into the same boxes and lock them away, and hide the fact that you have to press a passcode to get out of the assisted living facility, right? It's a prison. Let's call it what it is.
Okay.
And it's a little box, and people aren't made for little boxes.
Okay, so tell me some of the expressions. I am aware that there's Volition around the corner doing games. There's
I've been through there a few times.
and Nina Paley is doing things with
I'm going to be out at the Game Developers Conference later this week. Flying into Oakland, and it's in San Francisco. A couple of my best friends, Jonathan Soderstrom and Dennis Whedon, are coming out. They have this game coming out called Hotline Miami 2. My car, which I drove over here, and it's going to be in the game. My 77 Chevy Malibu green with a cream vinyl top. But I'll be out there among the other people that are like me that make weird little video games. And sometimes one of them catches on, like this guy who made this game that's sort of like a virtual Lego playground. It's called Minecraft, and he sold it to Microsoft for $2 billion cash that they were holding in Europe because they're based in Sweden. So, yeah.
So, tell us a bit about virtual reality. Explain virtual
Well,
reality.
how would
because
you
I
like
have-
to me? I'm not sure I want to do that, Dave.
that
I'm
means,
making a 2001 joke.
So you can have several players. You can have them doing things.
That's
you
what
can-
Minecraft is, yeah.
You can have people like Don Barnhart with holography.
Yeah.
You can do things, and you can imagine your way through, and you can compete with other people, and so you can virtually create a whole community.
We've been doing it for years. I had a MUD. People might remember MUD's multi-user dungeons. They started in the 80s. I got really into them in the 90s on PrairieNet, which was a local.
Yes.
If you remember PrairieNet, and I would telnet to the big one. It was Elite Mud, EliteMud.com, port 4000. That inspired me to find this guy who had this thing called Stuff Mud. And it was all text only, right? This is in the 90s. And then I found out, oh, these MUDs are actually programs that run on Linux or any POSIX system. And both those MUDs were using the Circle Mud open source code base. So I downloaded my own copy of that and built a MUD when I was like 13 or 14. And some Russian grad students really liked it. I called mine Indigo Mud. And they put it on a box in their computer at Moscow State University. And I had indigo.msu.ru, port 1234, 1997. And I knew back then that all we needed to do was add graphics to this and then add virtual reality, and it was going to be like crack, right? And they did. Just a few years later, we had EverQuest, which people refer to. When I was in college, they'd be like, "That's EverCrack," was the joke, and then World of Warcraft, and then Minecraft, and that's and StarCraft. That's just what people do already, Dave. Like it's not the future. That's the past and the present for young people, for people below a certain age, or people who follow.
Let's get back to the real world.
What is the real world, Dave?
Where we have people, and I put down a few things that we might like to game with. First of all, we need teams. We need coordination.
I agree.
We need leadership. We need leadership that is mentorial. You get a mentor that.
I like the mentor relationship.
You have
Definitely.
small groups. You might have 6 people. Sometimes you might have a loner that does their own thing.
Yes.
But you have calculated risks.
Definitely.
And all these things are things that you can do in your practical day without a computer if necessary.
Yes, and with a computer. Don't make the computer the enemy. They're our friends.
And then you need friendly people who will criticize your work.
Yes.
In a very valuable way.
Yes, that's all we have. The game, some of the video game developers that I work with, we have a private internet forum called the Poppin' Cast, where we can post and talk about the stuff that we're making and whatever we're watching and seeing in the media or whatever topic that interests us. And the only people that can get in are people that someone who's been in there can spot somebody, make a post, be like, that person looks interesting. Then we vote whether that person gets in or not for 7 days. And then if seems like it's cool and people are, there's actually detailed rules, but I don't even really remember them, then we let them in. So I'm always looking for people on Twitter and stuff in every country, or whatever, that are making interesting games that I like, and, young people especially, so that you can mentor them and get them hooked in instantly with the people like Cactus and Terry Kavanaugh making Hotline Miami and JW doing Nuclear Throne and stuff, and
Okay.
we mentor them and make cool video games, right? And then they can show them without it having to be public. And I've got a team over at John's Pipe Shop right over there, they're messaging me. I'm building a game that I'm going to be demoing out at the conference out there in San Francisco. Right now, they're messaging me, seeing if I'm going to come in. So,
Okay,
yeah,
well,
we're doing Al Harris and Derek Glusak, and who else? Charlotte, and then a guy out in France, Luke, that's been working full time on art for these projects. And we use Slack, which is sort of like a web wrapper on IRC. Slack.com, check it out. It's basically IRC.
you
That's
need
cool.
functional failures, and that's a positive thing. And I'm thinking about the average lecture classroom where you're doing test and measurement, and I'm thinking this doesn't exactly evaluate the sort of people that we're trying to work with. So these principles, coordination and leadership, courses that give you information that you need, functional failures, calculated risks, friendly criticism, seeing the results of your decision. And one of the things we put down is don't preach to people too much. Don't be
Definitely, that is
motivating.
incredibly important. That is like one of my highest operating goals is not to be preachy, because I don't, in art, I want the truth. I want, not even the truth. What's the truth, right? I want something, excuse me, I almost said a bad word, fudge. I want something cool. Make me something cool, right? If it's cool, I'll like it. If it's good and quality and I can see the craftsmanship, I'll like it. If you're trying to just like the pixelated, high resolution pixelated simulations that we get in computers and stuff, I'll see the pixels, or I'll see that you're not being, that you're being dishonest. I just want you to make something cool. Make something from the other systems in your heart that not
So
just
be
your
prepared
brain.
to move and associate
Yes.
with your friends and relatives.
Yes, make
Okay.
something super cool, and don't preach, and don't try and think you figured out the world, because the world is super complicated. And if you have figured it out, tell me, because I always like to know more things that I don't know already. More perspectives, right?
So, looking at my notes here, I think one of the things that you look for is freedom of expression.
Yes.
And
It's dangerous to express yourself in certain ways in this country now, and especially in this city. And it's criminal what's going on. It's, if you're driving right now at the intersection of University and First Street, there's by the police station. There's cameras recording their traffic stops. And if you Google the Wall Street Journal article from a couple weeks ago, it's on my Twitter, twitter.com/doomlaser, DOOMLASER. I posted it a week or two ago. Wall Street Journal reports that the Homeland Security Department is every state is feeding those traffic cameras into the Homeland Security Department, and the U.S. is tracking people's cars to track people's locations. And the Wall Street Journal also reported that, and this is funded by our, again, tax dollars that we don't choose to pay. Like, you have to, when you start making money, you have to pay those tax dollars. And, I was just, I have my own, I was making money directly. I was self-employed, so I had to pay all the taxes. So I really do care about, I didn't just pay half of the Social Security that employees pay. I paid the full thing for myself. I paid payroll taxes for myself. And even though that costs so much, I want to expand Social Security to everyone. But, those taxes are going to, as Eisenhower said, the military-industrial complex, and it's having a huge effect. The money is causing us to be spending a large chunk of the resources on the planet on building weapons and tracking systems, and drones and monitoring systems. And we just need to readjust we just need to tune down a little bit of that money and tune up some of the money to take care of people and animals. And yeah, and though, just Google it, the Wall Street Journal. drones. No, not drones. Oh yeah, we're also building drones to fly over the U.S. cities in the U.S. with fake cell phone towers on them, or receivers on them. That, you know, when you move around in your day-to-day, you connect to different cell phone towers. That's how cell phones work. They're radio transmitters and receivers. And the government builds ones that can fly over, so every phone in the area connects to them for a moment, so they can track people's position down to, you know, several meters. And they're secret about it. And that's our money. That's the money that everyone is obligated to pay into, and they're not even telling us that that's what they're doing. And they want to do it for the rest of the planet as well. And I have a big problem with that. Like, if you're going to do it cheap and do it out in the open. If you're going to do it the way we're doing it now, it's going to breed dissent. You can't control the world by trying to clench an iron fist like that. It will slip through your fingers.
So there's some concern at the United Nations. At the United Nations level, you have prime laws which say we should have self-determination, we should have liberty,
Yeah.
we should have access to law,
Yes.
we should have freedom of movement,
Yes.
freedom of thought,
Yes.
freedom of religion.
Yes, and what about
freedom
these
of
supermax prisons that are located far away from any city, so it's even hard for the families to get to the, and we're locking humans, not animals, we're locking people like me that weren't born with the privilege of the family that I had, and they get in trouble with this society that we have right now, and we just put them in these prisons, and not only that, it costs a bunch of money. Like, our prisons are important, we need them, but the way things are right now is, for old people, for weird people in the U.S., it needs work. But thankfully we have places like WEFT where people can talk about it still and reach an audience.
Very primitive level.
Yes.
While you go to San Francisco to
Oakland,
well,
and San Francisco.
it's very close to San Francisco.
Yeah.
It's sort of Silicon Valley area.
Don't get me started on that.
David and I are going to Prairie State Conservation Coalition
Sure.
meeting. And there we have to deal with little remnants of nature that are disappearing at a rapid rate.
Yes.
There's very little prairie left. And Illinois has like 13 ecosystems, and they're all being challenged.
Yes.
So we do have computer people who are documenting those areas. We do have people who are doing something like us, videotaping those areas so that you can get access to that information. That's very pragmatic from your point of view, but we need that sort of level of people. Where do we find those people? Are they taught at the university, or are they taught at the community college? Is this the applied sides of what you're talking about? How do we encourage the wee folk, little folk?
It's a good question, Dave. The problem is people get distorted by it, especially when you're living in this system. You know, people get concerned. Let's make sure I get money, right? And so I don't know. You were saying, how do you find the right people to provide leadership to help out conservation? Yeah.
I need the person that's going to work on the railroad.
Yes. Well, that's why I'm saying, like, I hope that the young people that are growing up now, I hope for me, I want to be a role model, or I want to build the prototype, as Andre 3000 would say, of a business that is mostly a nonprofit, but still has a dragon head of capitalism in the top 20%.
Let me jump in really quick here. We're down to the last 5 minutes of the show, and we're going to have to reintroduce our guest pretty soon here. But you brought up an interesting question. How do you get the wee folk, little folk on the right track? One given that your propensity for using computers, the easy thing would be computers will be wonderful. Are there any things that don't involve technology, digital divide, and all that you could see still having potential today to help the WEFT middle field?
I took Aikido as a kid over in Urbana, which was inspiring. I read up on all the major religions. I read all, it's education, but not just Western education. You need to look at what's going on the whole planet, and eventually, if and when we encounter other societies, when we start traveling, outside our solar system, which is totally possible, even with the engineering we have now. It's criminal that we're spending so much on weapons to fight each other when we could unite the planet and start traveling and seeing what's out there, right? At least Elon Musk has the right idea, and he loves video games and is out in San Francisco, so just keep making video games, and hopefully get an introduction at some party, right?
Video games?
Yeah. Well, I mean, people do everything in Minecraft, right? And that's one of the cool things about Minecraft. Oh yeah, did you want to introduce me again?
Yeah. Okay, this is Mark Johns, and he's got a background in high tech.
Yes.
And
Silicon
he's,
Valley, Apple.
you probably know his sister Megan, who's a musician locally, and so he's been around in this town, and he has relatives in the West Coast, so he moves around, and we're very glad to have him to come and talk to us about
I'm
these
glad to
things.
be here, WEFT, or WEFT in general, and Dave and all of you. I love WEFT. I love WEFT so much. So I remember old timer. I would drive around with my friends in high school, in my first car, and we'd be driving around. An old timer would come on, and he would be doing a show like right there where you're sitting, right? And then we would come to WEFT, and we'd like come in and be like old timer, and like give him a hug and stuff, and it was a beautiful, beautiful thing.
We had about 18 records in those days, and it did get more biodiverse. I just picked up a pen that he would inspire people with.
Oh, he's a very inspiring dude.
Old-timer pen.
Yeah, old timer, man.
So,
And
so at that level,
Sure.
how do we do it is our question.
you just gotta find. It's sort of like if you've ever read, like the Once and Future King, right? The leader of sort of emerges because it's an emergent thing. Like the leaders sort of emerge. The one that should be leading sort of moves to the front of the V of the birds flying. Yes, and right now the problem is, it feels like people that would emerge as leaders are being stamped down by vultures that just want the money. But I'm not sure. I could be
Before we
wrong.
go off, let me say that there's a video side to this. WEFT has the radio side, but there's a video side. Your mother takes endless photographs of.
Yeah, I love my mom too, of course.
She
She made me bring this into video, her iPhone 6 Plus that I've been helping her first smartphone, but she didn't tell me the passcode. So I'm recording with my iPhone.
Well, I think we're getting near to the end.
Oh yeah, I was gonna talk about how Minecraft. Well, I really know how video games should work, but maybe I'll make it a GDC talk, my next GDC talk, and WEFT we should talk about the community and how to serve the underserved in this community best, and it's very important. And
Well, let's think about other continents too.
and the animals and the slow-moving plants that are being slowly eradicated. Let's save them, right?
And
Well,
with
this
that,
has been Dave Monk, your Prairie Monk WEFT Champagne. And my guest is Mark Johns. And
oh, and Dave on the board. I'm sorry, pushing all these buttons over here. Forgot who I am here. Mark, since we don't have time to get into all of your stuff, what is the place where people can read the most of your stuff? Do you have a blog? Do you put things on your Facebook page?
Twitter.com/doomlaser. It's DOOM, like the game, LASER.com, or Twitter. or Snapchat. Snapchat Doomlaser. I do about 10 or 20 snaps a day. I try and make them real weird, like a David Lynch thing. And if you go to doomlaser.com, there's a bunch of YouTube videos that other people have uploaded of my work and the work I've collaborated on, like Hunger Games game, when the movie came out, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
If you go to the very, very bottom, click the Crunchbase link, and you'll see all the media interviews that I've ever had, pretty much going back about 15 years.
Alrighty. Yes.
Music of India is next. The server is outside.
Right. Music of India, as he's saying, comes up next. A couple of things here. The views and opinions expressed here are those of the speakers. Anything anybody said here, it was their own thoughts and nobody else's. Two really quick things on the subject of just about everything that we've been talking about here. A while back in England, there was a fellow by the name of Alan Turing. He came up with a lot of these ideas, and if you were interested at all in a pioneer of computers and all of the ideas, why they are binary and things like that, there's a movie out. I think you can possibly still see it in theaters. It's called The Imitation Game, and if you want to get even deeper into it, there's a 700-plus page, bordering on 800-page book that the movie Imitation Game was based on. You can find the book Alan Turing, The Enigma, and there are so many things that we take for granted around us that Alan Turing foresaw, and in many cases was one of the pioneers in getting them begun. One last thought: I almost had pipes freeze because of the really cold spell that we had a little while ago. So I thought I would mention we've got 2 nights coming up of sub-zero temperatures. Keep an eye on your water pipes. Do the slow trickle thing so that the water keeps going very slowly. Put extra insulation on them. Do whatever you can. Wow, we're almost 2 minutes into overtime here, so it's time for me to shut up. And again, this is WEFT Champaign, 90.1 FM.